Arya stepped off the bus and watched it rumble away on the narrow, winding road that clung to the windswept cliffside. She clutched her camera and scanned her surroundings. The coastal village was a sleepy place on this chilly morning, a smattering of pastel painted houses, a solitary stone jetty stretching into the sea, and most impressive of all, a stalwart lighthouse perched at the very edge of the cape. A wiry gust inflicted stinging salt spray onto her cheeks, and she inhaled deeply, relishing the bracing air. Although she had traveled across continents in pursuit of the world's most breathtaking sunrises, something about the raw serenity of this place stirred in her a sense of expectation. This might be the spot where she would finally capture the perfect dawn, the elusive halo of light that would define her travel blog's essence and perhaps reveal something of her own. A year's worth of sleepless nights and endless flights had worn her down. She had roamed from frosty mountaintops to tropical beaches, always forward, always restless, always convinced that her best sunrise lay just beyond the next horizon. But somewhere deep inside, Arya carried a question. What did she truly chase? Before boarding the bus here, she realized she couldn't fully articulate the reason behind her persistent searching. Adventure, she told herself. Discovery. A story worth telling. Yet the more distant destinations she visited, the more she realized she was chasing something intangible, a sense of belonging or connection, a warmth she had denied herself for years. As she trudged down the stone-paved slope into the heart of the village, her attention snagged on the red-roofed lighthouse at the tip of the cape. A chalkboard sign outside a small cafe read, "Tours to the lighthouse. See the dawn like never before." Intrigued, she pushed open the cafe's wooden door. The interior was cozy, a smattering of tables surrounded by an eclectic collection of mismatched chairs, and walls adorned with vintage photographs of the lighthouse in different eras. A man with soft brown hair behind the counter looked up from his newspaper. He greeted her kindly, motioning for her to sit. His name tag read Leon over a steaming mug of coffee. He explained he was responsible for maintaining the lighthouse, leading visitors up its spiraling steps and showing them the panoramic view of the coastline at sunrise. Arya felt an instant warmth in Leon's gentle eyes. His voice had a confident yet kind tone, and as she listened, she found herself relaxing in a way she scarcely did in new places. Usually, she approached each destination with a purely professional lens, searching for the next photograph to the next blog post. But Leon's demeanor coaxed something more personal out of her. She accepted his invitation for a private tour of the lighthouse at daybreak. Leon seemed delighted by her enthusiasm, and they agreed to meet before dawn. On her way out the cafe's door, Arya paused. For a moment, she let the hush of the ocean fill her ears. The heavy clouds that had loomed overhead began to disperse, revealing a faint golden glow along the horizon. Instinctively, she raised her camera for a test shot, capturing the subtle brilliance of light shimmering across the rocking waves. She stepped away with a sudden flutter in her chest. Maybe, in this place, she would find more than just a sunrise. She checked into the village's only guest house, run by an elderly couple who brought her hot tea and homemade scones. That evening, when she went back into town for supper, she glimpsed Leon again, this time lugging a basket of supplies across the quay. He waved her over and introduced her to a young fisherman who had just returned with a net full of fresh shellfish. Arya's usual wariness around strangers dissolved. Together, they laughed over stories of unbelievably tall waves and misadventures at sea. She found herself gawking a bit at how easily Leon chatted with everyone, an ever-present smile lighting his face, as if streaming from some inner contentment. Arya wished for a fraction of that peace. That night, Arya lay awake in her small attic room at the guest house, the sound of ocean surf drifting through the open window. She rummaged through her memories, recalling her first steps as a travel blogger, a world of excitement that she devoured with unstoppable eagerness. In the beginning, the novelty of each location had been enough. Scenic vistas, foreign accents, photogenic ruins, astronomic wonders. Now, after countless plane tickets and listless nights, She recognized that checklists of destinations did not fill the hollow corners of her spirit. Her heart still wanted something intangible, though she hesitated to name that something. She had grown so used to leaving, never staying long enough to invest herself in the lives of those she met along the way. The morning hours arrived with a sharp rap at her door. Bundled in a thick coat, Leon appeared in the corridor holding 2 paper cups of coffee. Arya, bleary eyed but brimming with excitement, took 1 cup gratefully. Outside, the sky was still dark, a vast indigo canopy studded with stars. Leon led her along the coastal path, up a winding flight of steps to the lighthouse base. The wind was biting, but she felt something reassuring in Leon's presence. When they finally reached the lighthouse's entrance, she marveled at its towering silhouette against the moonlit waves. Inside, the old structure whispered stories in the quiet echo of each footstep. The curved walls were decorated by keepsakes from its history, chipped photographs, maritime maps, ropes hung with care. As they began ascending the spiral staircase, Leon spoke softly about how his family had tended to the lighthouse for generations. The knowledge had been passed down from his grandfather, who'd once guided injured sailors ashore during terrible storms. Arya's chest tightened as she realized this place was not just a job to Leonet, it was a legacy. There was heart in every step of those stairs. They arrived at the lighthouse tower, stepping out onto a narrow walkway. The air was sharper here, the wind more insistent. Far below, the ocean extended dark and endless, with only the faintest line of light shimmering on the horizon. Arya set up a surge of adrenaline rushing through her fingers. She had documented dozens of dawns, but now the humidity of the salt wind and the slight tremble inside her gave this moment a profundity she rarely felt. As the sky's hue softened from navy to bluish gray, Arya's breath caught when the first sunrays broke across the horizon. The light was fleeting, like a burst of gold igniting the clouds from beneath. Through her lens, she captured the interplay of saffron and amber, waves gilded in liquid light, a swirl of pink etched deep in the sky. Leon, standing beside her, watched as she operated her camera with deft, educated hands. His eyes flickered with quiet reverence, and he murmured something about how he never grew tired of this moment, the birth of a new day. Arya paused between shots and felt her cheeks warm. In her haste, she nearly forgot Leon was there, but his voice, gentle and sure, reminded her she wasn't alone. They lingered until the sunrise matured into a full morning, painting the ocean a dazzling turquoise. Arya turned off her camera and sucked in a deep breath, her senses tingling with exhilaration. This particular dawn had been special, not just in color but in her own emotional resonance. Leon gazed at her with a knowing half smile. She wondered if it was that obvious her heart was stirred. He offered a small compliment about her dedication, adding that it was a privilege to watch someone so passionate about their craft. The sincerity in his voice made Arya's heart stutter. Over the next few days, Arya found reason after reason to extend her stay. She roamed the village's narrow lanes, snapping playful pictures of children hanging laundry and fishermen mending their nets. In the evenings, she returned to the cafe, sharing cups of hot chocolate or coffee with Leon. They spoke of life in broad strokes at first, her travels, his family's lighthouse traditions. But as the sun dipped below the horizon and shadows lengthened, their conversations turned more personal, regrets, hopes, the sense of restlessness that drove Arya from one continent to the next. Leon neither judged nor pitied her. Instead, he listened, occasionally offering a gentle insight or a comforting joke. One afternoon, Leon showed her a hidden cove at the base of the cliffs. They scrambled down a winding path flanked by gnarled roots and set foot on a narrow beach sheltered from the worst of the wind. The cove was strewn with smooth stones, shimmering shells, and shallow tide pools, teeming with starfish and tiny crabs. Arya felt a childlike thrill as she snapped photo after photo. Eventually, she lowered her camera and joined Leon in skipping stones across the water, both of them surprisingly terrible at the task but relishing the shared laughter. On that same day, as they climbed the path back up, Arya revealed how she had uprooted her life after a painful breakup 2 years ago, how heartbreak had propelled her into a life of constant movement, as if outrunning pain. That confession came out in a quiet, unsteady voice, but Leon accepted it calmly, responding with a simple, "I'm sorry you went through that." A random wave of embarrassment washed over Arya. She realized it was different here. She was no longer telling a story for her blog's audience, but rather unveiling a soft side of herself to a man who genuinely seemed to care. A new sense of closeness, both tender and terrifying, penetrated her shell. The next morning, Arya set out alone to capture a time lapse of the sunrise from a cliff overlooking the village. The forecast promised a spectacular sky, crisp and clear, but unexpected clouds rolled in, blotting the horizon in moody grays. The fleeting moments of light she had hoped to record were erased by an incoming drizzle. Disappointed, Arya packed up her tripod. Downcast, she slung her equipment over her shoulder, trudging back to the village. She felt the all too familiar impatience kindling in her, a voice that said, "Maybe you'll find a better sunrise somewhere else." Another voice whispered that she was running from a deeper emptiness. She arrived at the cafe dripping rainwater. Leon rushed over with a towel, a concerned furrow on his brow. "What happened out there?" he asked softly. She mumbled something about the weather, about feeling frustrated. With gentle coaxing, he drew out her real fear, that no matter how many gorgeous dawns she captured, it would never fill the emptiness in her soul. Leon didn't flinch. He offered her a seat by the hearth, a warm meal, and reminded her that sometimes life leads to the right place at the right time, even if we can't see it clearly in the moment. In that simple reassurance, Arya felt more care than she had in a long while. That evening, the residents of the village gathered at a small festival, a summertime tradition celebrating the ocean's bounty. Lanterns swayed above the main street, local fiddlers played lively tunes, and tables overflowed with grilled fish and sweet pastries. Arya almost declined to go, but Leon urged her. He insisted she shouldn't miss one of the village's most joyous nights. She was hesitant in crowds, always the observer, rarely the participant, but with Leon by her side, she found herself sampling street food, dancing shyly with elderly ladies who dragged her into their joyful circle, and capturing every bright laugh on camera. Halfway through the festivities, a soft golden glow outlined Leon's face beneath the lantern lights. Caught up in an impromptu waltz, he twirled her once, and she found herself unexpectedly relieved to be swept into the moment. When the dance ended, she clung to his arm, trying to steady her unaccustomed dizziness, and realized heat rose to her cheeks. Soon the band began a slower tune, and Leon's eyes found hers, seeking permission. Heart flopping in her chest, she slid her hand into his. In that gentle dance, Arya felt time soften around them. She closed her eyes and let herself be guided by the music's lull and Leon's reassuring presence. As the festival wound down and the sea breeze carried strewn confetti into the night, Leon walked Arya home. At the guest house doorway they paused, lingering in that hush where conversation melded with silence. She could smell the salty tang of the wind in his jacket. Absently, she played with a loose thread on her sleeve, wishing she knew how to navigate this uncharted territory of affection. She sensed her heart was opening like a book she'd never dared read. Leanne's hand gently brushed against hers in a tentative gesture, and her breath caught. Perhaps this was why she truly traveled so far, to stand right here, on the verge of binding her wandering soul to something genuine. The following day brought an unexpected storm. Heavy waves rocked the coastline, wind raking the cliffs, rain lashing the lighthouse's windows with relentless fury. The sky remained gloomy and charcoal gray, offering no glimpses of dawn or dusk. Arya worried about Leon, who insisted on checking the structure of the lighthouse whenever gusts threatened. Without hesitation, she grabbed her coat and waded through the downpour to help him secure the shutters and make sure the beacon kept shining. Once inside, the hiss and roar of the storm created an eerie symphony. They discovered a small leak in the tower's interior walls and raced around to contain the trickling water. Eventually, pinned inside by the torrential winds, they huddled together in a small side room of the lighthouse, lit only by a dangling lantern. Thunder boomed overhead, rattling the windows. Arya braced herself against the chill, and Leon draped a spare blanket over both of their shoulders. Breath steaming in the cold, they shared stories about storms in their lives, metaphorical ones, heartbreak and loneliness, as well as actual storms from Leon's childhood, including the day his father risked his life to guide a fishing vessel to shore. Somewhere between the flickers of lightning and the calm intervals of quiet, Arya became acutely aware of how safe she felt with Leon, the warmth of his arm pressed against hers. They emerged the next morning, battered by restless sleep but victorious over the storm. The clouds parted to reveal a transformed seascape. The heavy water was calm once more, sunlight dancing over the surface. The village lay tidy under fresh, invigorated light, drying its soaked rooftops. Leon asked Arya if she wanted to try again for a sunrise from the lighthouse. She nodded, her heart fluttering with the anticipation of seeing the dawn from that vantage point, and the anticipation of simply being near him. They climbed the spiral steps in silence, and Arya set up her equipment as the horizon shimmered with teasing apricot hues. The moment came gently, each band of color intensifying to reveal a breathtaking panorama of pink skies and molten gold dancing upon the waves. This time, Arya felt no frantic need to capture the perfect shot. She clicked a few photographs, yes, but then she turned off her camera, letting the lens of her own eyes absorb the wonder. Standing at the railing, whispering thanks for the calm after the storm, she felt Leon step behind her. One of his hands grazed her shoulder, and she closed her eyes, savoring the tingling electricity of his touch. When she turned to face him, the flush of the rising sun illuminated his features. Neither spoke. No lengthy remark was required to convey the sheer gratitude they both felt for that suspended second. When dawn broke free of the horizon, the world glistening anew. Softly, almost hesitantly, their foreheads leaned together. But then, with surprising certainty, Leon lightly tilted her chin, guiding her gaze to his own. The sea wind fluttered around them, and Arya found her heart hammered in her chest as he pressed his lips to hers in a tender, shy kiss. Warmth coursed through her, melting the invisible armor she'd carried for so long. For the first time in what felt like eternity, Arya had no urge to run or to chase another horizon. The following days seemed to slip by in an exquisite blur. Arya grew closer not just to Leon, but to the entire community. The small, sun-washed village offered the warmth she never knew she craved. The older couple at the guest house teased her with approving grins whenever she arrived home late from her time with Leon. She found new joys in cooking with the cafe's chef, learning local recipes, discovering the hush of the early mornings in the quiet streets. Above all, she relished discovering more about Leon, his steadfast dedication to keeping the lighthouse shining for all who needed a beacon, his easy laughter, his observant eye. Whenever she teased him about leaving footprints in her blog, he just shrugged. He was happy she stayed, nothing more complicated than that. Eventually, Arya faced a decision. Her blog schedule had her next traveling to a distant land known for pink-hued sunrises across desert dunes. Yet here she was, unsettled by the thought of leaving. Several sponsors had already asked her for the next round of pictures and posts. Her brand thrived on movement, the promise of the next spectacular sunrise. Would she disappoint her loyal followers if she lingered? She weighed each possibility in her mind, unsettled by the notion that if she stepped away from her frantic pace, she might lose everything she'd built for herself. But she also recognized that life on the road might cause her to lose the most precious gift she had encountered in a long time. One twilight, she found Leon perched on the jetty, gazing at the horizon. She approached quietly. He turned, a gentle question in his eyes. She explained her dilemma, her sponsors, her obligations, her fear of losing her momentum. Leon listened without interruption. Finally, he asked, "But what do you truly want?" The simplicity and weight of the question nearly toppled her. She realized that while her nomadic existence had brought her countless memories and photographs, it had never filled her with a profound sense of being cherished or at home. As she stared at Leon's earnest expression, she felt the prickling of tears. She managed a small laugh, acknowledging that she'd been wandering for so long, uncertain of what she sought. Now, perhaps, she had found it. On her last scheduled morning in the village, Arya rose early. She clasped her camera and headed to the lighthouse one more time, uncertain if she would find Leon waiting there. But he was already at the base, a warm smile lighting his features. They climbed the staircase in the semi-darkness, each step echoing the unspoken truth that Arya's time here might be ending. At the top, she laid her camera aside. Before them, the sky's first alpenglow rippled. The dawn was glorious yet again, gentle pinks morphing into shimmering oranges. Leon slid an arm around her, holding her close as they watched the horizon blossom. She had made up her mind hours earlier, but only now did she put it into words. Leaning against Leon, she whispered, "I'm staying. I need to see what it's like to stop running." He drew in a slow breath, his relief and joy evident. The next sunrise beyond this one would be hers to witness from the same vantage point, day after day, if she wished, shared with the man who had taught her stillness and the serenity that comes from it. She quietly rested her head on his shoulder, breathing in the scent of salt and the faint musk of his jacket, a new sense of contentment filling her chest. Far below, the waves swirled around the rocky base of the cliff, carrying away old doubts and regrets. The sunrise completed its climb, painting the sky in a spectacular palette of gold. Arya couldn't remember if she had taken any photos this time, but she realized it didn't matter. Something deeper than pictures was unfolding in her heart. Here on this remote cape, she had discovered that belonging somewhere or with someone was more powerful than chasing fleeting glimpses of the sun. Long after the glow of dawn softened into morning, they lingered at the railing. Neither minded the time, the obligations, or the demands of sponsors. In that stillness, Arya knew her expedition had led her not just to a sunrise, but to a love capable of illuminating her path more brilliantly than any horizon she had ever pursued.